Milestone 3. This content will be recorded and made available in an accessible alternative format upon request. If you require captioning, transcription, or other communication services to access this content, please contact the Disability Resource Center at drc@snhu.edu or 877-591-4723, selecting option 4. Milestone 1 summarized the articles. Milestone 2 critiqued the articles. Now Milestone 3 is where you move towards the future. Science builds upon itself, so the first thing that you will need to do is find a new article to contribute to the conversation. This article must be a peer-reviewed journal. To ensure that you get a peer-reviewed journal, look at either the Shapiro Library or Google Scholar. Google alone will not do it. You must use Google Scholar if you're going to search online to limit it to peer-reviewed journals. Once you've found your article, you need to describe it. Start by introducing the article. This is what I've selected. Note that in introducing the article, I not only named it, but covered the rubric item Contributions to Collective Understanding. Items do not have to be taken in order, and I felt like this was a good opportunity to cover it within the flow. Of course, you can do whatever you feel comfortable with. That was just a style choice I made. You will then do a brief version of the descriptions and critiques that you did for the other articles in Milestones 1 and 2. You must cover the hypotheses. The variables are not required, but always good to add in. Next, describe the methods. Be sure to include a description of the participants. Who the participants are is critical to interpreting the results. Finally, briefly cover the results and discussions. After you've described the article, do a quick critique of it. Make sure that you discuss reliability, validity, and credibility. Name each of those concepts and discuss them. You don't necessarily need to go as in-depth as you did in Milestone 2, but you should give the reader your educated opinion on how much you should trust the article, using class terms to support your arguments. Now that we've integrated a final fourth article, you will move on to attempting to come to some overall summary about the subject material. Make sure that you mention by name every single article that you've discussed in coming to this conclusion. You can give them more or less weight depending on how credible you found them, but they should all be included in the discussion. You will have 4 articles here. Given that I didn't do a full draft of Milestone 1, I only have 3, but don't let that throw you. You will need to have 4 articles listed here. As I was writing this, my thought was, boy, I wish now that I talked more about community participation findings in Milestone 1. I didn't, though, so I couldn't really frame my conclusions around something that was being brought up for the very first time. If you find yourself in a similar boat, you have 2 options. Either you can frame the articles to match what you've already written, as I did, or you could theoretically rewrite your previous milestones to include that additional information. I would discourage the latter, as it leaves you moving into the final project with material that has not yet been reviewed, but if you feel strongly about it, I would encourage you to talk to your instructor directly. This material then flows nicely into an overall conclusion. Given what you've learned about this topic, what take-home messages can you come up with? I will be the first to admit that I struggle coming up with great ideas for a new study, but that is the last step of your narrative. Your idea doesn't have to be incredibly innovative, but 2 very important things to keep in mind. First, it is not sufficient to propose an exact replication. Let me say that again. It is not sufficient to propose an exact replication with a different population. Notice that while I haven't actually written out a hypothesis here, I am proposing an entirely new direction for the hypothesis in this study. Second, this should demonstrate some thought. Simply saying the new study should look at the spectrum of severity is not sufficient. Add in a few details around the sample and the specific methodology you'd recommend. It's okay to borrow from previous studies here, just don't do an exact replication. Finally, remember to add your new reference to the reference list using the APA format.